I knew I had heard of out of body experiences, but that's all. Like I didn't even at the time, you didn't even, it's hard to process what's happening to you. You don't even know if it's real, if it's a dream. But I do remember thinking in the process of coming out of my bed that maybe this is an out of body experience. But I had these mirrored closet doors, like that almost took up the whole wall. It was a small room. And when I flipped myself around in the air, because I was about to hit the ceiling, that's when I saw myself in the bed. And you said the remote next to me, for those who don't know, the remote started floating or levitating before I did. And when the remote got high and I tried to grab it, that's when I came out of the bed.
Welcome back to Awakened Minds podcast. I'm your host, Natalie, and today's guest is Tyler Kiwala from Journey to Truth podcast. Today, Tyler's going to share some of the experiences he's had over the years. We're also going to dive into what attachments and entities truly are and how to be aware of them. But I also wanted to bring up Tyler hosts a conference each year called Rebels of Disclosure, and the topics him and Aaron discuss are parallel timelines, UFO disclosure, time travel, Hollow Earth, ETs Among Us, Secret Space Program, as well as channelers and much more. So if you guys are interested in this type of content, please let us know in the comments below. Please also, we would like if you could subscribe and share, as this does help our channel grow. But guys, without further ado, I welcome you, Tyler.
Yeah. So I was just like everyone else. I was fully ingrained in the matrix, just living my life completely blind to even the concept of an awakening. And, I could tell my whole life story, but it's not that exciting. I was always into all of anytime there would be a UFO or paranormal or Bigfoot or cryptid show on cable, I was like glued to the screen. I was into it. I believed it, but then it stayed there. I just, life goes on and you get distracted. Then I got old enough and discovered girls and partying and that whole life. And it took me down a very, it started off seemingly harmless until my mother passed away. And then I started using all of that as a coping mechanism. And then that's when we get into some really dark stuff, some entity attachments and some things that I didn't realize were even going on until my awakening. But um, so, what I think of now as fun compared to back then is completely different. I look at that stuff now and it just makes me sick thinking about the way I used to live my life. And I don't regret any of it because I really think it made me who I am. And like, if everything didn't happen exactly how it did, I wouldn't be here today talking to you guys. And there was so much wisdom and like wisdom can't be taught. And I'm not saying I'm some wise elder or something, but it can't be taught. It can only be gained through experiences. So,
Mm,
and ultimately through the darkest experiences. And I was in some dark places hanging around some very dark crowds. And at the time, it was harmless to me. I must have been protected somehow because I probably shouldn't be alive. But um, I found myself in situations where I didn't know anybody I was with. I was with, in places I've never been, and getting in cars with strangers, taking drugs I didn't even know what they were. There's any number of things could have happened to me, but I'm here. But what I learned in those moments and those experiences, and I didn't realize I was learning anything at the time, but reflecting back on it
yeah.
now, it's actually very beautiful. I'm so grateful to have all those experiences, and it really, really has become helpful in the awakening too, because what happens in an awakening is sometimes people start to feel superior or better than other people. Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden you've like learned the truth and you've discovered all this knowledge and all this stuff. And then you look at the people around you who haven't seen it yet, and you almost feel like you're special in a way. You put yourself on a pedestal. I'm not saying everybody, but that hints of that can leak into your life if you're not self-aware. So um it was a great tool to have all those experiences and be in those places, because now I can look at those, like if they want to go get drunk or they want to go do this or that or this drug, I understand it. I relate. I was there. So I don't judge them at all,
Right.
as opposed to somebody who grew up clean and they look at it and demonize it. I'm like, hey,
Right.
like go do it. Actually pursue it. There's something in in that situation. There's a lesson there for you to learn. You have no idea what it is. Your soul is here to learn lessons, and that's maybe the only reason we incarnate into the physical vessels to learn those lessons for our soul. So I don't regret any of it. I think it actually has been a great tool in my journey, really. But and then after that, what happened? So I started, a lot of the astral attacks started happening after my mother passed away. Is whenever the very first thing that happened to me was I experienced levitation out of my bed, and I don't know if you guys have heard that story or not, but um,
I might have.
Yeah,
I
I
know it
did
happened to
see
my
it.
brother. Was it like paralyzed? What do they call that? Sleep
Sleep
paralysis?
paralysis.
yeah, well, it didn't start off as paralysis. It started off as me. I wasn't even asleep, so I can't even call it sleep paralysis. It started off as levitation, and then I was actually slammed back down into my bed. It's a whole story, but I've
Yeah.
told it a million times at this point. But I was actually slammed
Exact
back
thing
down into
happened to my brother.
really.
Exact thing you're saying. Yeah. He
Wow.
flipped upside down and was facing the bed, and then he slammed face first into it. He was a
Wow.
kid at the time. He told me, he's 15 or so.
That's really interesting. I didn't get slammed down like that. Like I started going back down, like trying to swim my way back down, and I got flipped over and like crossed up, and like there was a heavy presence on top of me. It was at the time I didn't know what it was. I thought I was dying, and I
Mm.
just remember thinking that somebody was gonna find me dead the next day. That's really I had that thought going through my head, but I realize now it was an entity on top of me that I couldn't see. And that was the very beginning of years of this. And I didn't know what to do about it. I spent years being attacked by these entities, and it was horrible. I was 25 years old and I was afraid of the dark. Literally, I was afraid to go to bed.
Yeah, same, same. Yeah.
And
I just wanted to ask you real quick, just before you go, when you did have this levitation experience, a lot of people watching may think that it was like an astral projection. But I do remember watching the podcast and you mentioned that there was a mirror in front of you, and then you saw your physical body along with the remote control. And that's when you realized, oh, this is like physically me, like
mhm.
levitating, right? So there is some people may thinking it's, out of body experience, but it's not. It's something much, much more different.
Yeah, a lot of people think that. And everyone asked me if I was drunk or if I was doing drugs. It was a weeknight. Like I didn't, that was the one thing about my party life. Like I was very dedicated and loyal to my job. So I didn't do it during the week. I was always on the weekends when I didn't have to work. But um, I knew I had heard of out of body experiences, but that's all. Like I didn't even at the time, it's hard to process what's happening to you. You don't even know if it's real, if it's a dream. But I do remember thinking, and like in the process of coming out of my bed, that maybe this is an out of body experience. But I had these mirrored closet doors, like that almost took up the whole wall. It was a small room. And when I flipped myself around in the air, because I was about to hit the ceiling, that's when I saw myself in the bed. And you said the remote next to me, for those who don't know, the remote started floating or levitating before I did. And when the remote got high and I tried to grab it, that's when I came out of the bed. Almost like somebody turned the gravity off, or I was in some sort of field.
Mm.
Get it.
But when I saw myself, and when I flipped around and I saw myself in the mirror with the remote next to me, that's when it got real. And I didn't see my body wasn't in bed. Like I was in the air, and like panic started setting in, and it was a pretty intense experience. But that was the very beginning of years of that, and I missed numerous days of work, and luckily I had a understanding boss at the time, and I didn't even know how I didn't lose my job, but I didn't. And it wasn't until I finally decided to tell somebody about it because I was scared to talk about it. People think you're nuts.
Yeah,
And
I remember
it's
that, man.
especially my friends who were all the same partiers like I was, they would just think I was nuts and I didn't, the only reason I realized I was friends with all those people at the time is because I was avoiding who I was and I was trying to fit in with this group of people who didn't even
Yeah.
know themselves
Exactly.
either,
Yep.
you know. So like I couldn't even tell. It's not like they're gonna understand me anyway. Everyone's being a fake version of themselves around each other. Those aren't real friends, you know. So um, but it wasn't until I finally decided to tell my dad, and as soon as I told him, it was this whole what I call snowball of synchronicities. It's just like one thing after another led me to Reiki healing, led me to this, led me to that. And I started like this whole reality just opened up before my eyes, and things that I didn't believe in before were now real. It wasn't that I didn't believe in them, but I just didn't give them any energy. And now it was all very real, and I was participating in it, and I was experiencing it firsthand. And that's when the answers came, when I finally opened up and started talking about it. But until then, I was suffering in silence, really. And I realized how crucial it is to talk. It doesn't matter who it is you're talking to. Like once you put that out into the universe, it's frequency. Like a frequency,
Yeah.
it's a match is going to be made. And you're going to find the people that you're going to resonate with that you need in that moment of your life. So,
I've never really truly understood the meaning of frequency until I experienced it for myself. Exactly what you just explained. It's like when you start to do the work, Reiki healing, seeing mediums, psychics, healers, whatever it may be, you're starting to open these doors. You become more aware, and then suddenly you're attracting these people into your life that you need at the time, that's going to help you expand. It's almost like viewpoints in your spirituality that are going to continue waking up, and you work together. And it's interesting because your experience is similar to ours, me and Jimmy, in a way, a little bit different but similar. We found each other because I interviewed people who had near death experiences, and it's interesting. Somehow I've realized that near death experiences also correlate to ET phenomenon as well, because I've interviewed a few people who now have ET contact and things like that. So there's so much more going on in our reality that we just don't understand. And so now my mission, Jimmy's mission, your mission, it's all so similar. We just want to kind of know what's going on. We want to know more about ourselves, and yeah, like there's so much conditioning, so much lies, so much going on that I just can't wait to get into. But I do want to go back to entities and attachments, if that's okay.
yeah, of course, it's my specialty, unfortunately.
Oh, perfect, I guess. Because on my journey,
Is that
right?
right?
So
Yeah.
I'm curious just because, I'm dabbling a little bit, practicing mediumship, doing some psychic energy work and things that just started happening. I opened up a little bit. So I'm working on that and exploring that. Um, One thing in particular that keeps being brought up that I didn't really necessarily believe in was entities and attachments. So yeah, I'd just like to learn more about that and what you've learned about it.
Well, I learned the hard way. I found out that I had an attachment myself. So after my mother passed away, that's when I went heavy into all the partying, that whole lifestyle, all the vices, like everything. I had them all. And it wasn't until things got serious, like the attacks got so bad, that's when I opened up to my father, and that's when things opened up, and I discovered Reiki energy healing. And I discovered it through a UFO group that I found local, and some person was talking about Reiki healing, and it was a gift from the ETs, and there's energy, whatever. And I was like, yes, this is interesting. I felt something, some part of me knew that I needed an energy healing, whatever it meant at the time, I didn't know. And right after that meeting, I found a local store that had a healer, Reiki healing. Like it was like right down the street from my house the whole time. I had no idea. But now I was at that frequency, it came into my awareness. And I go in the store to inquire, and the practitioner is behind the counter. And she's like, "Oh, that's me. I do the healing." I'm like, "No kidding." I was like, "I just learned about this. I just guided to, look into it, and maybe I could book a session." And she's like, "Yeah." And she started reading me on the spot. And um, she's like, "So what's going on?" And I kind of started to tell her what was going on. And I was like, I feel like something is like, I have something going on with me. I can't put my finger on it. And I told her the story, how it all, she's like, when did it start? And like right after my mom died. And she explained it. So when you're in a deep state of grief like that, you're weak. You're energetically, like you're at a very low frequency. It's one of the lowest frequencies possible. And it was almost like a fracture in my auric field, she said. And once that fracture occurred, it's like a spotlight out into the universe for all
Oh,
these
yeah.
entities, like all of these entities out there that are just like looking to harvest us, like harvest and loose feed off of us. They see that as an opportunity. And basically, like I put out the bat signal and one of them came in, and
Oh.
it was fueling. I didn't realize it, but it was fueling all of my addictive drives, like everything, like all the drugs and the sex and the alcohol. Like it was I, it wasn't until I realized until this entity was removed that I realized that it was the entity that was driving all those sensations, all those addictions. So it was really interesting. So I ended up booking a session with her, and she realized, she's like, you have definitely something attached, like something's here with you, but it's not going anywhere. And she's like, the way Reiki works is everything happens naturally in the order it needs to. Your body has to align itself. All these things have to happen. So it wasn't until the third session where she was actually able to address the entity. And it was, I walked in and she's like, okay, you ready to get rid of this thing? And I still didn't even fully believe that I actually had an entity. Like it was just something I was like entertaining because I knew I was supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And she's like, you ready to get rid of this thing? I'm like, let's do it. Sure, I'm all in. And she explained that Reiki, like it doesn't work if you don't believe it. Basically, meaning you have to be open to the energetic exchange. Otherwise, you can block those healing frequencies. So I was open to anything. And so she started doing her thing. She got out some different tools and stuff that day, and different like oils and stuff. I don't know. And she put her hands over my like sacral chakra, which that's where they target. They target the sacral chakra, the sexual energy. That's why they want like a hyper sexual civilization, like society. They want everybody just in they basically hijack sacred sexuality because it's the easiest place for entities to enter your body is through the sacral chakra. So I don't know why that is, but that's the number one place that they target across the board. I've learned that over the years.
Yeah, they
And
call
so
that
that's
your
where this,
hell realm anyway, right? You're in your
right.
chakras. Isn't that your hell realm? Anyhow,
Yeah. Well, anytime you're just like haphazardly using your sexual energy, like without any understanding of what sacred sexuality is, you're opening a portal. You're literally like, it's like opening a portal. You're opening yourself up to these entities. And this, either way, however I picked up this entity might have been through sex. I don't know. But this is where it was residing. So she put her hands over me and I could feel something inside of me physically running from her hands. Like it felt like if you've seen the Matrix where he has that thing in his stomach and they're trying to get it out and they suck it out of his belly button,
yeah.
that's what was going through my head. I was like, oh shit, this is real. Like there's something I could physically feel something in my stomach that was like like it was running from her hands. It knew that it was being targeted. And I was like starting to panic. I'm like breathing heavy. I'm like, oh my God, this is like actually something in me. Like this is crazy. Like I'm thinking, I didn't think I would physically feel anything. I wasn't expecting that. That's why I was so caught off guard. And she did whatever she was doing, pulling, and I don't even know. And when she finally just did this last thing, like, and pulled this thing out of me, somehow, whatever she did, I felt like my hips physically lifted off the table. I don't know if they actually did, but it sure felt like it, as this thing left me. And then I remember I just like broke down in tears and I felt completely different. I didn't even feel like myself. So much so that when I was driving home from that session, I really didn't know who I was. Like I realized in that moment, like I didn't know who I was. And it was the very beginning of my path of self-discovery because now this thing wasn't controlling me anymore. It wasn't my identity anymore. And I had to rediscover who I was. And then I started to realize, so if that came in after my mom died, by the time I got this Reiki session, it had been 5 years. So potentially this thing could have been with me for 5 years. And I'm like, if it was with me for 5 years and I was clueless to it, how many other people have entities working
Yeah.
through them? And I'm like, everybody, like, especially if you're drinking and partying, like,
Hell yeah.
it just was a no brainer. I'm like, wow. And then I started realizing you start looking at people's behaviors and, you know, when Jimmy's drunk, he's not the same person because he's not. There's a new entity that waits for you to get right past that a certain point. They hang out in the bars and they wait for you to get past that, just over the edge, that one last shot where you open yourself up and they come in.
And
And
there's
then that
another
happens.
thing too, where sorry, I just wanted to jump in quick because
Sure, go ahead.
a lot of my friends were, drinking, doing drugs and all that stuff. And I didn't want to do it. I just felt this sense and urgency, like I don't want to do it. And then they would be like, oh, come on, just come out. Like, why are you being a whatever? Like, I'm not going to say the word on camera, but you know what I mean? Like they try to entice you. So it could even be the entities in them that are trying to get people like me who don't want to do it, like to lure you in because it's like, we're going to get you, right? Like there's so many avenues. Scary.
Right. It's like the little devil and angel on your shoulder.
Yeah.
It's always tempting you, always, and misery loves company, like ultimately. So that's why nobody wants to take a shot by themselves. They want everybody to take a shot. Or "Oh, come
Right.
on, let's have a beer." Like they don't, like, subconsciously, you don't even understand that you're miserable, but misery loves company. And if
Mm.
everyone else is doing it, now it's not so bad. Now it's not a bad thing
Yeah, it's
because you got
normal now.
everyone else to do it with you. And
And
it's,
that was
and
the
that's what,
same.
go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Now I was going to say that was the same time that I had mine for 5 years. That I had whatever it was, but mine came from painkillers. I did construction, so
Yeah.
I got hurt, and I had to keep working, pay that child support thing. So
Yeah.
that is what brought it in, and it came to me and said, "Now we got you." Like
Right.
literally woke up in the middle of the night, and the room got dark as shit, and after that for 5 years, nothing I touched. It was like everything I touched dissolved. Like it was like everything it had acid in it. Like
Mm.
everything was in my house broke down, my car broke down, my friends started, they didn't
Yeah.
want to listen to nothing I had to say.
100%. Like they target, like, everything's energy, right? And like water and electricity, it's all flowing currents of energy. And they target that. So they can, like, if you have car issues or plumbing issues, like, it's very could be related to an entity. Very much could be related to an entity. But uh
Everything I touched was
yeah,
broken. It was incredible. It's like
yeah.
I
Well,
had a
that's
friend
why.
of mine. He told me literally, he said, Jimmy, if I didn't know you and you didn't come here every day telling me a little bit of this at a time, if you were to just come and tell me all these stories at once, I wouldn't believe what you're saying is possible. He like
Yeah,
really
yeah, you
said that.
needed, like, you almost need to be spoon fed to believe it. Yeah. A
Yeah.
little bit at a time. But yeah, so I realized I had to learn who I was again, and it was a whole dark night of the soul. Like, could be because after that left me, my friends, my family, they thought I needed an intervention. They thought something was wrong with me. I wasn't the same person anymore. My friends actually were gonna try and set up an intervention because what happened to Tyler? He's not the same. He lost his mind. I started, like, waking up to the truth, and I started posting all this stuff online about things I was waking up to, and my friends are like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Like, who's this person? What do you like? Where did this come from?" It was like the veil was lifted, and I could see now, and I had just a whole new lens. And my third eye, my pineal gland was now activated, and I started having more positive experiences than negative. But the whole entity thing, I realized so much I've learned over the years. Especially, like, that's what they want. They want you to go out and get drunk and pick up these entities. You get drunk and some random person gets drunk and you have a one night stand. You guys both have entities working through you, or one of you has an entity that wants to get to this person, and it could be passed easily through intercourse. I call them STDs, sexually transmitted demons. Um, like, no, I'm not even joking. It's a real thing and
I
it can happen. And
just
like,
never
if you
heard
want
that.
to really go there, like, I have witnessed, like, actual rituals being performed during intercourse. like, so they'll use two entities to perform some sort of like dark ritual, and you'll even you might be performing in front of an audience, you don't even know it. Like, I'm talking astral realm type of stuff.
Yeah.
um when people are blacked out drunk, they don't understand how they're being used in ways that they'll never understand, because they don't remember it. You blank slate yourself, you mind wipe yourself.
Well,
And
one thing that I come up with as to why they would use the sexual centers is because there's something about having sex with someone that brings your soul together that can actually enable manifestation to a really high frequency. So
yeah,
there's something about sex energy and manifestation. So that might have something to do with why they use those centers, because there's a lot of magic and energy involved in that, which is, yeah.
yeah, it's
I'll
sex
tell
magic,
you
it
real
really
quick.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Remember, I mentioned briefly about talked telepathy to that gray alien last week.
yeah.
Well, at some point in that, I was on the bed and I'm laying on my back looking at the ceiling, and I just knew I was about to have sex with something I couldn't see. Right? I know it sounds odd. So,
No, it
and then
doesn't.
I'm laying there, and it got to the point I was fully clothed, and I'm like, oh, this. It got to the point where I just said, screw it, do whatever you're going to do, and let's get this over with. Right? I was like getting pestered. And then for a second, I sat there and I went, you know what? Fuck you. And I kind of goes like, you're not doing that to me. And
Mm.
it just stopped. It was like once
Hmm.
I put my foot down, it just ended. Like I literally just said, this ain't happening.
Right.
Move on. And then it
Yeah.
did.
If you
But
do not consent, but sometimes they take that power away from you to even do that, which I've experienced. That's like the succubus energy. I've experienced that before. You're being like raped astrally, and it's horrible. And I can get into
yeah,
the
it felt
dark
like I was
details
being
of that.
pestered.
Right. I mean, I was actually full on like it being raped. Like it sounds crazy, and I don't care what people think anymore, but it was something it was probably single-handedly the worst experience of all of them. And I was actually the most helpless. Like, I had learned how to combat this stuff and fight it pretty good, but this was like next level. Um, I couldn't get out of it, and I couldn't scream for help, and I was awake, and I could
So even
see.
after you learn this stuff, they still got to you.
Oh yeah, well, that's the thing. It never it doesn't matter if you learn it, you have to apply it. and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and there's new levels of it. For one, like, you can develop a modality to protect yourself, but these things are like raptors testing a fence. Especially if they want to get to you, they will find a new way. They find ways in, or they wait for you to let your guard down. Like, if it's not a daily practice, they wait. Like, you think, oh man, it's been 3 months, nothing's happened. Like, maybe I don't need to do this every day. I'll be damned. As soon as you decide that you're safe, that's when something happens. Like, it is unbelievable. And that's when they get into like the whole dream walkers and how they infiltrate your dreams and stuff. But um, it all sounds absolutely insane, but
No,
it's a reality. Like the astral realm and what happens there and what occurs there. Like Max Spears used to talk about a lot of the Russian spies that were over here, during like World War II or whatever era it was. We all have seen the movies with the Russian spies in the United States. Well, they go after the high-ranking officers and the people with classified information, not only because, first of all, those people that move up in the ranks, a lot of times they're they're souls. There's somebody actually, like, there's somebody big on a soul level. That's why they're big on an earthly level, right? That's why they even get put on a pedestal, unfortunately, especially like movie stars and celebrities. Like, we could be looking at like reincarnated like Greek and Roman gods and stuff in the form of a celebrity. And unfortunately, this time, instead of doing something useful, their energy has been hijacked and are used to, you know, entertain us and wow us and hypnotize
You
us.
don't even know
So
if they were that person back then, though. That story could have been all flipped around to make them look special.
exactly. It's a
You know
very
what I mean?
convoluted, but what the whole point I was getting at is that, um like, these Russian spies, they could actually, Max Spears used to talk about how just by having intercourse with somebody, you don't even need their file with their top secret stuff. You can, like, everyone has their own keys and codes to the Akashic records, which has information to them at a soul level, and everything that they've ever been involved in all their lifetimes, including the information here on Earth. But that can all be transferred through intercourse. And he talked about, like, that was the main reason, like, to like hijack that sexual energy, and it was like a data download. And then they can literally, they had some, I don't know how they did it, but they had some way of retrieving that information after it was obtained from the spy. And when he was talking about this stuff years ago, like 2016, whenever, like, it was like people really weren't believing, maybe before that even, but still, not everyone really, I don't think they were picking up what he was throwing down quite yet, but I really think he was onto something. And after having the experiences I had, like, it makes so much sense to me. It's
Yeah, it's
just
amazing to
it
see that.
it's 100% why the things are the way they are in this world right now, and why they were
Yeah, yeah.
constantly being tempted to go down these dark paths, and to go play in the dark, as I like to call it, because there's something in it for them. They feed off of us. We're actually a fuel source. And when you cut yourself off and rise above that, like I said, they're a raptor testing the fence. They find new ways, especially, like, I don't know who I am at a soul level. I've gotten a lot of information through sessions, and QHHT and Akashic readings and all kinds of stuff that tell me who I am on a soul level, but I don't have that memory, right?
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
if all that's true, it would make sense why I would be targeted. It's like, we don't understand who we actually are. And that's what, like, we're here to do, is to remember that. So if you are, like, they understand every soul, they have a way of monitoring every soul. And when they're going to be, like, when they're conceived, the moment of conception, who they are, what family they're going to, where that soul, who the parents are going to be, everything. And they can monitor that. That's why we have all these targeted individuals, because they know which souls are actually going to be a threat, which ones that are true lights that are going to make a difference. And that's why those people are targeted the most. And people like all three of us right here on, like, doing what we're doing, I guess we could be potential targets for making a change because we're spreading that light.
I was just gonna say there was a podcast somewhere you were on. It wasn't from your show, it was you were on someone else's podcast, but you were talking about the subject of um the reptilians or those beings taking your soul and putting them into another physical body so that they, whatever gift they had, wouldn't manifest the way they would hope because they wanted them to go through, a shitty experience. I mean, all three of us here have gone through a shitty experience. Like, we've grown up, the ways that we have that have made us the people that we are, but it's almost like it's backfiring on them in a way, because I feel like a lot of people are awakening through trauma, and that's what makes you stronger in a sense. So it's almost like whatever energies are going on, whatever forces are going on, higher in the higher realms is obviously, one step ahead, because I feel like there's a lot of light coming in now because of it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they shoot themselves in the foot every step of the way. I always say this. And the trauma can be your big motivator, can be your biggest drive if you allow it to be. Like my pain, like I've said this before, I have hip and back issues, but that has been, like, after I've reflected on it, that's been my number one driving force to heal. Like, to
Mm.
figure out energetically, where is this coming from? Why is this happening? But it's opened up all these other things that I didn't even realize I had to address. So because of all of, you can say, the attacks or the trauma, like, it's actually having the opposite effect. Yeah, I did suffer through part of it, but I had to, and I rose above that, and there was a lesson there, and I learned it. But then
You face
then
your
it can
fear and
be
all that.
like you said, it has a backfire effect, basically. So I agree with you 100% there.
They had in that same experience I had last week, right? Telepathy with the gray. And like you, I don't care who believes me or not. But he explained this is that we're essentially your best friend because we will motivate you to do things you would never do if you finally do face your fears and your pain and things like that. Once you come through it, you're a stronger individual And if things were rosy and everything was positive, you would have never gotten up to do any of this. So
Right.
in that respect, they are your best friends. And the guy's
Yeah.
explaining to me, at least it was a woman, but at least we understand the symbiotic relationship between us, where positive beings don't understand that we are here to transmute negative energy back into positivity for you,
Right.
right? Like we bring it negative and they let it flow back, and it's a
Right. Well,
and like we
it's all
don't
yin and
understand
yang, and it's all
it. Yeah.
yin and yang, and there's a balance, there's duality, polarity, whatever you want to call it. Like the dark is always serving the light, if you understand that, you know, and what we just talked about is a perfect example of that. Like they'll put you through a seemingly negative experience, but it's going to ultimately cause you to rise above where you ever could have been without that negative experience. So it's like, well, damned if you do, damned if you don't for them, but they don't care because, like I said, it's a fuel source, and there's a real like they don't have the they don't have the manifestation abilities, the creative abilities like we do. Unfortunately, that's why they literally feed off of us because they understand that, and that's why they need us to co-create their reality for them. Them meaning the elites, the entities, the dark players, the deep state, the cabal, whatever term you want to use. They're arguably not human. Like there's entities oversold. They're oversold. They're people and entities working through them, and you can get into the whole clones and androids and all that stuff. But like I don't think we're dealing with actual humans here. Even if they are like human looking ETs in appearance, we might perceive them that way, but energetically on a soul level, there's something completely different. And they can't manifest like we can. So what they do is they put all their propaganda and all their ideas and their life and everything they want to create, they pump it out in the movies and the mainstream media and the news, and they get us to believe it by bombarding us over and over with the same lie until it becomes a reality. And then not only do we believe it, now we start, since we all believe it, and not all of us, but most people believe it and they bought into it, then you start co-creating that reality for them. The reason they do that is because they don't have the power to do it themselves. They understand us way better than we understand ourselves, and they know we're master manifestors. So if they can get us all to do that, then you know it's good for them. That's why they're constantly putting out the reality that they want. It's not actually the reality that is. It's the reality that they want that we manifest for them by being unaware, just by being not self-aware. Because if you're not self-aware, then you're just a zombie. You're a slave, a minion to them, honestly.
So when Obama puts out a movie about the end of the world, what do you think he's trying to make happen?
Well, did you see what was released about that? The
No.
hypnotic frequency. So
No.
um okay,
I
so
believe it
this is
though.
a quick history lesson. So back in the 60s, William Tompkins,
Yeah, I
former
know that.
Navy admiral, yeah, so he wrote the book Extraterrestrial, Selected by Extraterrestrials. And then there's two other volumes that were written after he was dead because he handed his notes, his journal to Bob Wood, and Bob Wood wrote the books for him. But in the first book, he talked about in the 60s working for TRW, a Douglas think tank. It's like a Douglas aerospace industry.
Yeah.
They were testing, doing blind tests on the audience. They were playing hypnotic frequencies through the soundtracks of movies, ELFs, extremely low frequencies, that would bypass the conscious mind and enter the subconscious mind. And they had programmed demands in the frequencies, and they were seeing if they could get people to do things unbeknownst to them. In particular, they were getting the men to want to watch sports, drink beer, and eat pizza. Like it was that specific. And they had like it was 100% effective every time. They can literally get those men to go want to drink a beer and watch the sports and eat the pizza. And then women, for whatever reason, they wanted women to watch soap operas. So they were putting something in this frequency, programming them to want them to watch soap operas, which at the same
It was
time
working
this
too.
testing, yeah, at the same time this testing was being done is when the very first soap opera came out and all this stuff. This was back in the 60s and it was effective. And they were so back in maybe not every movie, but there were certain movies that had a underlaid under the soundtrack was this hypnotic frequency. And basically weaponized to mind control people. They realized they can mind control people through cinema. This movie that you're talking about, Obama, what was it called?
I forgot too. It's something I
The
forgot.
world, whatever. I forgot.
I'll link it below when we find it.
Yeah,
I
fine.
can't. I know it's on the tip of my tongue. So this guy who illegally downloads movies, he torrents them, and when you download the file, it downloads the movie and then the audio file. Well, when he downloaded this movie, it had 4 audio files, and he realized that there's these audio files that were under the soundtrack and the dialogue were like frequencies, specific negative frequencies. And he started looking into it, and he just came to his own conclusion that this is like a weapon. It's like a frequency weapon that's being played through this movie, but you can't hear it. It's inaudible. They're
Like a
ELFs,
dog whistle
extremely,
kind of thing.
yeah, yeah, like a dog whistle. But they, whatever the effect they was having on people, we can only speculate. But it's a fact. He found it. Like they were literally
It's in
using
there.
these movies on Netflix, created by Obama, which some people say is the Antichrist himself. Um,
Him or
Believable.
so
Elon.
it's proof. It's not even a theory. Like we can read William Tompkins' book and say, oh, this is interesting. This is interesting. They're probably not
Well,
still doing it. It was just a test in the 60s. But then here we are in 2024, and somebody is proving it, with
well,
our
David
technology.
Bowie talked about that. Even in the
Yeah,
70s, he talked about something called white noise or something like that. Or no, there's
yeah.
black noise and white noise.
Mhm.
So you can go positive or negative with like binaural beats, I think they call them.
Yep, yep.
You
It's
can
all
do
weapon.
positive. Yeah, yeah, positive or negative. I don't know the name of who it was on stage, but it was one of these rappers or something, and they did something happened on stage, and the entire crowd, like the first 20 rows of this crowd, just wiped out. Did you
Yeah.
see that?
I did. There's a
What?
number of artists lately where people claim that they don't remember the concert. People are falling over. I forgot that one artist. Oh my God, I can't think of his name. I'm terrible with names. But
Yeah, you're better
people
off
were
with that.
actually dying. Like people actually, a number of people died at that concert, and it's there's frequencies being played at these concerts, I think. And I think they're ultimately testing, it's like them testing a weapon on a large crowd. So, I mean, it's crazy what they're capable of, but I definitely think like scary movies, they open like not only do they pump frequencies into your brain, into your subconscious mind, but they can open portals into your living room. And in the early days of my attacks, I realized that anytime I would watch a scary movie, I would guarantee to be attacked that night. Like I just it was
Yeah.
wasn't didn't take long to connect the dots until I realized like I was scared of the dark anyway. I
Mm.
was it was a horrible time.
That's Natalie.
And
Yeah, same.
well,
I still
you
sleep with a light on. I fucking hate the dark because there's something bad about the dark.
well, it's just ultimately being afraid of the dark is the collective fear of the unknown. Most people are fear of the like they fear the unknown. That's why you don't like to go out in the ocean and swim. It's not because you're scared of a shark or whatever it is. You're scared of the unknown. You have no idea what's beneath your feet at that very moment. And that's
Mm.
freaky. It's the same thing being scared of the dark. You're not really scared of the dark. You're scared of not knowing what's right in front of you in that very moment. So it's a fear of the unknown more than it is being scared of the dark. Because as soon as you turn the lights on, you feel safe. As soon as you're on the beach, as soon as you're on land, you feel safe. So it's just about like understanding. Like you can thrive in that. Like I've learned to not. I'm not. I could walk around in the dark and go in the woods. I used to be afraid of the woods and everything. You just overcome all that because once you tap into your power. Like I have so many like modalities now and that I feel like almost impenetrable, like unstoppable. Like I have no problem being walking into a dark basement in like an abandoned house or something, unless my intuition's going off and like something is telling me like don't go down there. It's not because I'm scared, it's because I'm listening to my intuition,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Well, they
Because you're not, even though I might feel unstoppable, I'm not. Like that doesn't mean that like I'm just gonna be like walking around with this armor on all the time and nothing can get to me. That's actually arrogant and silly, you know.
yeah, it is.
Um,
That's your ego getting to you.
right, exactly. But
They
but you can get to a place where I'm trying to say this for Natalie, so you don't have to be afraid of the dark. You can be, just be so solid in the way you walk, in the way you carry yourself, that like even if there was something in that dark room, it couldn't affect you, you know?
You just reminded me of last night. So it was dark last night. I had a really high power bill. So I'm gonna start turning the lights off because this is getting pretty bad. So I turned the lights off last night and I was like, oh, I'm thirsty. I need to go get a drink. And I'm like, I can do this. You got this. Don't be scared. Just go do it. And I'm just like, my hands going around the wall trying to find the light switch because I'm terrified. I'm like, why can't I do this? So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's
He
real
said
though.
when I
Like, go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick what he said when I talked to this gray was that the picture was the ocean, and he was showing the ocean with these waves, and that's fear. That's the darkness you mentioned.
Yeah.
And you can fear this, and you could stay on the beach your entire life and be trapped, or you can get out there and learn how to surf that and use that fear to take you place like somebody when they surf, right?
Right.
It's taking you
Yeah.
places you could never go unless you conquered that fear.
Right.
That's
And that
so
was a
relevant.
symbolism. Yeah.
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 I don't know how it works, but we're all like born into that fear of the unknown and the fear of the dark. Like, I don't know how many people, like as a kid, how many times have you like been in the basement of your home? Well, here in the States, you know, we all have basements. You turn the lights off and you just take off and run up the stairs because you feel like something's chasing you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
like it's just like collectively you start telling that story. I'm like, yeah, I always as fast as I could go up the stairs because something was behind you, you know. It's just what it felt like.
This one
It's like
thing
we're
I
all
would get, I'd go into the bathroom because I wear makeup, right? The minute I start washing my face in the shower, I feel like there's something in my face and I'm like opening my eyes, soap in my eyes, like, fuck. Like
I
it's
used
every time.
I used to do that. I used to be afraid to close my eyes in the shower. Like really.
Yeah.
Like some like murderer is gonna be standing there with a knife.
As soon as he closes his eyes, I'll be there.
Right. It's like what would I do if something showed up?
On a
But
Yeah, right.
side note with that, I just wanted to quickly mention. So I found out that I'm clairsentient. It's part of being an empath. I can feel things on a high level, but I can feel into people's energy, their emotion. I can pick up things that are going on in their life. And I started to wonder that feeling I get where I'm terrified. Am I just really feeling something that's actually there that I can't see? Like, surely there's like, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, but
that's very possible. It's very
mm,
possible, but you know, and that's why you have to clear your space. And you know,
yeah.
for years, I was getting attacked and attacked. It didn't matter what I did. Like they still found a new way, and I could like it's a whole story. I've done presentations on it. I'm even writing a book, but like how I would like figure out I would conquer one way, and how they figured out a new way in, and how it kept changing, and they kept adapting until they started they just tried something completely new that I'm still trying to figure out. I'm like, how are they getting to me now? Like they figured out a new way. And it doesn't happen that often, but it still does.
They can use people around you that they can't get to as
Yeah.
well.
Well, that's 100% true. And that's happened to me. Over the years, that wasn't just one isolated incident with that entity. I've picked up stuff other throughout the years that, you know, it doesn't really attach to you like it attached to me like it did the first one, but they can like attach to your aura and just kind of hang out. But they can't get to you at a certain point. So they use people around you to get to you. And like,
Mhm.
so sometimes you notice like all of a sudden old friends or old girlfriends or people are coming back into your life that you know. It's like I just look at them, I just want to say, you're a demon, like uh, you know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, you see the same frequency, and it's like an immediate. It's like I know you. I don't know you,
right.
but I know
Like, am I
But I
dating
have
my father right now? Like, who are you?
it's
Uh,
it's really weird, right? So we understand like and what happened. So I had a session, this unbelievable healer who's actually going to be at our conference, which we can talk about later. But she helped me remove this thing. I didn't know. She knew exactly when I picked it up. She's like, 3 years ago, you
is
decided to
that
go out and
Jackie.
have
You
some
said.
drinks. No, it's not Jackie. No, it's somebody else.
Oh,
She's not going to be a speaker, but um, she's like 3 years ago you decided to go have some drinks and you were at a bar and you actually were at like at this back alley thing and you were just kind of at the wrong place at the wrong time and you picked up this entity while you were out and she said it wasn't really there to attack you, but you were just that's why you just don't go out and do that stuff because you just pick it up sometimes. It's just like a hitchhiker basically.
right.
And so I brought it home and the impression that she got from this thing was that it was more or less just a board. And it was like it needed, like it was feeding off me, right? But it was doing it more out of like a curiosity, not even as like an attack, but what it couldn't actually get to me. So it was working through all these people around me. And at that time in my life, I thought it was so odd. I'm like, man, all of my old friends are like inviting me back out, like actual like old girlfriends. I'm talking like from years ago. People I mean heard of or heard from or thought about, like all of a sudden they're just back out of the blue. And I'm like, this is I knew the red flags were going off. Like I knew something was going on. And it wasn't until this session where she said like this thing was working through people to get to you. And I'm like, that makes so much sense. And as soon as I she removed it, which was really interesting how it happened, all of those people just I hadn't heard from them again. They just quit
Damn.
talking to me. It was like they just stopped. And it was like trying to suck me back into that old lifestyle.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I'm
That's
telling you,
amazing.
like it's an actual spiritual war. Like I don't think people fully understand that. We don't
Yeah.
have the luxury to just haphazardly throw our energy around anymore.
Mm.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
when you do, you will repel and attract the right people. When you do
right,
finally become yourself,
right.
they'll just naturally get away from you if they're not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
And then like also like beer, I think is a mind control drug as well. Not only does it mind wipe you, it makes you know, obviously causes brain fog. It makes you can't really remember things that well. You always like I don't know. It just you feel dumb in a way after you know from drinking for so long. I remember like I never really felt like I was smart back in my party days. I felt like I didn't know anything. I didn't care. So you just go after the instant gratification stuff that's gonna amuse you like you know like a freaking
Yeah.
kid or something. But the show Inside Job on Netflix, if you guys have ever seen it, it's a cartoon that discloses everything, like
No.
everything about what's going on. They put it right there in the cartoon, and they do it in the form of
Cartoon.
comedy. And yeah, it's a cartoon, but
Does all
it
that
talks
really?
about it talks about all the underground bases and the reptilians running the planet and the clones and the mind control and everything. But in the show, the beer they drink is called Mick Ultra. We all know Michelob Ultra, right? But it's
Yeah.
M in the show, it's not MC Ultra, it's MK Ultra, which is mind control drug.
Oh no.
So I'm like, what if they're actually telling you like Mick Ultra is a mind control drug? Like, so when you drink
See
it,
why I always hated that beer.
right?
The
But I
worst.
really do
Good.
think I really, really, truly believe that whenever you do, like if you drink enough of it, it is mind controlling you. It's dumbing you
Yeah.
down for one, and your brain isn't firing like it should be, and it's like closing off those neural pathways,
Mm.
and you can't access
So
information like you used to be able to, you know.
so what do you think when what you see going on out here nowadays with the blue-haired people, they don't know if they're a man or woman and or if they're all five genders that are all of a sudden relative. But what do you think when a guy like Alex Jones comes out 20 years ago talking about atrazine and fluoride and all this being put in your water, and then you see society today doing this? Like that's not
I think,
normal. What's going on right now? Like the
oh,
volume of
no,
this.
no, they're altering our genetics through through the food industry, water, the air. I mean, we're getting poisoned on all fronts. You walk out your front door, you're getting chemtrailed. You can't even drink your own water. You can't breathe your own air. We're getting hit with all the harmful electromagnetic frequencies, the radiation. We're just being bombarded.
Mm.
The things that you watch and consume all day is also like part of your diet, and so it affects you on all levels. We don't even realize it. I mean, basically everywhere you turn, you can't eat even fruit at this point. Like you have to be aware of like
Yeah.
what fruit you're eating. Like organic food isn't even truly organic. So, and it's
Yeah.
all poison. And why is it poison? Because it ultimately is. It's like it's genetically manipulating us. They're like I don't know how to. It's almost like under some big experiment right now, and they're seeing if like all this stuff, like they do in the lab, and they're like, this works. Let's see what happens when we do it on a large scale. And right now, we're
Mm.
seeing the results of stuff they started in the '60s. I mean, that like
Oh.
the CIA talked about, they have the declassified documents of all the LSD experiments and all the public mind control experiments that they were doing back
Yeah.
then. But now it's all been shut down. Bullshit. Like it's just been funneled into a new program under a
Mm.
new name, and
Yeah.
the show goes on.
You
And
know,
we're
you
seeing
just gave me an aha moment. I just wanted to jump in because I just had a thought process, and I know this is going to go in a roundabout way. You know, people watching, say what you want to say, but I'm getting that. What if the earth is flat, right? Hear me out. What if the earth is flat and, you know, above the Antarctic, or, you know, on the other side of the Antarctic is more land? That's where the elites are, right? But they're siphoning from us here in the middle of the Antarctic, you know, flat earth, whatever you want to call it. I always get downloads of like, you know, they're controlling us here, but they're reaping the benefits over there. So I don't know why I'm bringing this up. I just felt like maybe sharing it with you, you might know something a bit about that, or like what your thoughts are on flat earth. And yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
definitely think that the actual flat Earth is a psyop. Like I personally think that. Um, Actually, that show, The Inside Job, they talk about that. So the guy he works at a Rand Corporation, which is a corporation I'm sure you guys are familiar with. But in the show, he for whatever reason they start this flat Earth psyop, and he creates this whole web page and gets this whole following and everything, and then at the end of the episode, like the movement got so big on that episode. In the end of the episode, he came out and told them, he was like, guys, it's not real. It was a psyop, blah, blah, blah. But they're like, no. Then they were like, you're the psyop. Like, no, it's real. Like, so, and then so they like at gunpoint demanded him to like sail them to the ice wall. And they ended up sailing into a hole at the pole instead of the ice wall. And they all like fell into the hole. And that was the end of the episode. But
Oh, no
so,
shit.
I think there's something to the flat
They
Earth
found
because
that
if
rubber
you
bird in there.
no, there's something to it because what's happening there? Everyone's questioning our reality because things don't make sense. And there's things I think realities are merging right now. People are seeing two suns, three suns. The moon doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I think what's happening is like there's these dimensional shifts occurring, and we're starting to see two realities merging, and sometimes we get a glimpse of both of those overlaid realities, and all of a sudden once you see that, like the history doesn't make sense anymore because how can this be possible if we're told this?
Yeah.
And so 100% what you said, like they're controlling it from the outside and looking in, like that, however you want to look at it, ice wall or a sphere, and they're just outside of that. It doesn't matter. That part's true. As far as like, I just don't think, after reading, so Sean David Morton has a Sands of Time series. If you guys are familiar with Sean David Morton, he wrote a set. So he was, okay. I have to tell this story to preface what I'm about to say. So he's a researcher. He was on the Art Bell show years ago. He's a UFO researcher, but he's also has got some ins with the government. I don't really know how, but he knew somebody in the shadow government. Let's just call him the shadow government. He knew somebody and he was friends with him. And the guy always wanted to share information with Sean, but he couldn't. And the guy was always meticulously logging. And so in the shadow government, everybody keeps a black book, a personal black book. So all these clandestine programs, secret space programs, whatever it is, they do it so there is no paper trail to ever be found, even if they were found out. They do it to leave no paper trail. So all that people are left with is their testimony, which can be debunked because there's no paper trail. This is how they keep it a secret. But these guys have their own personal diaries, their black books. So he basically handed one after he moved on, which the whole book is about time travel. So he moved on, I think, to another time. But it was during Obama's inauguration, actually, when this guy moved on, and Sean David Morton was presented with a stack of this man's diaries after he moved on, along with some USB drives full of classified information that this guy could not share while he was alive or here due to NDAs. Well, basically, what it was a history of the shadow government and everything that they've known and been doing behind the scenes since the 40s, 30s, 20s, actually, all the way up until current. I'm only through book three. I haven't read all seven, but I'm in the process of it. They're like 500-page books, and I just started book one at the beginning of this year, and I'm already halfway through the third one. But what happened? So they tell the whole story of basically the real secret is always never been UFOs and ETs. It's time travel. Like we are a time traveling civilization in the ancient, like in one of these Navy bases in Nevada. It's one of the top secret bases that you have to have like the Q clearance, which is like 35 levels above the president to even get into it. In the middle of this base, this is where like the command and control center for what we would know as a secret space program. But in the middle of the base, there's this Mayan statue. And he said the reason the Mayan statue's in there is because, as far as we could tell, it's the first known recorded time traveler on Earth. And they realized like people have been time traveling forever. And that's why we have so much stuff doesn't make sense. And it's a temporal war. And they're always going back and changing things and altering things. And that's where these Mandela effects come in. And the whole point of telling the story is they talk about everything that happened on this planet and the early space programs and the testings and everything. And peppered throughout the book, the Earth is a globe. And if you believe this information, they don't ever once talk about it being a flat Earth, not even entertain it. Like it's a sphere, and they talk about it, it's just not even in that level of
Nothing else
awareness.
out in space is a sphere, so why?
Right.
I mean,
So
is it flat? I should say. So why? Okay,
but
that's
what I'm trying to say, if the Earth is actually flat, then all these documents and everything that he was handed that he turned into these books. So what he did was he took these material and he turned it into, by request from the man who gave him the documents, but turned it into a sci-fi series because he could never release it as the truth. You just couldn't do it because but within it, I reading these books, it's been like I don't even know how I've had an intelligent conversation about disclosure or the shadow government prior to reading these books because like there's so much that I thought I knew that I didn't know. And either way, like that would all have to be all of that would have to be complete bullshit if the earth was flat. And I just don't
Mm.
right.
believe I don't believe that's the case. But I do think there's like this Area 51 whistleblower who came out in 2008 talking about how our government understands dimensions and they're very aware of other dimensions and we traverse the dimensions. We have the ability to do that. A lot of the ETs, like when they pop in and out of a reality, that's what's happening. It's all different like frequencies, but he described each dimension as a blanket. So each dimension can be viewed as a plane of existence. So, and he said that imagine each plane stacked up like blankets, and like we're in the third dimension, and the fourth, fifth, and sixth. And he described like every time you traverse the dimension into another dimension, Jupiter will be there, but it will be different. It'll appear different in form. Like it won't be a gas giant anymore. It'll be a solid habitable planet with booming civilizations. And in another dimension, it'll be something completely different. And he said there's dimensions below the third dimension, which he didn't get into. But he talked about the planets shifting, changing forms in different dimensions. So I'm like, what if there's a a dimension, a lower dimension where the planet is flat? Let's just pretend that that's the case.
Yeah.
What a perfect psyop. So that would mean if you put out, why would they put out a psyop? If you can get people to believe in a flat planet, they're subconsciously lowering themselves. They're descending instead of ascending. They're lowering themselves into the second dimension, into a lower consciousness, a lower frequency. So that
Yeah,
might
that's
be the
brilliant.
whole reason why they push that because now they're operating in this lower thought form, this lower dimension which is like what a way to counter the ascension. If you can trick people to believe in a flat 2D reality, like look at a video game. Video games started off as side-scrolling 2D video games where all the circles on the screen were flat disk until what happened? We invented 3D technology and that flat disk became a sphere. Well, the same thing happens in our reality. If you're in a 2D reality, everything's going to be on a flat plane,
Yeah.
but just by the nature of physics, that flat plane becomes a 3D sphere. Like if you're ascending, no, regardless, by nature, it has to become a sphere. And then maybe beyond that, it becomes more of like a holographic planet, maybe. I don't know. And
Yeah.
who knows what
Mm.
beyond that. But
Just
it's
by
constantly,
definition, it has to be a sphere to be in this dimension, right?
yeah, like it kind of does. But I think when people argue, well, like there's arguments against all of it. We can get into go back and forth all day
Yeah, we don't
long.
gotta get too far.
I ultimately think that whole thing is a psyop personally, and I have my reasons, and I could be wrong. I really don't
I
know.
like how
But
you put that. That's really good.
yeah,
What you just said. You're manifesting yourself into a lower dimension for them.
I'm just
You're
going to
doing
quickly
both.
remind you, Jimmy, of the channeler we had on our podcast. And you asked the question, is the earth round or flat? And that's exactly what he said.
what did he say?
Exactly
Yeah.
what. So he was talking about belief systems and manifesting, which is what Jimmy was just saying. I think he was going on
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
I'm going to actually play it.
They all exist basically, depending on your collective agreement on
On
it.
your
So
frequency and your
they
belief
they
Yeah,
wouldn't make a
system.
definitive answer because they all exist somewhere, depending on
right.
where you are, right?
Yeah, and
It's
and timelines and shifting timelines and
Just
dimensions and
I like the
frequencies plays
reasoning
into
you just
that.
said that. Sorry,
Mm,
Nat.
yeah. So it's a consensus reality is what it is. Like
yeah,
so a fact. So a theory. Here's the thing. What makes something a fact? It's a fact is a theory that enough people agreed upon. Enough
Mhm.
people said that theory makes sense. It's a fact. But it doesn't mean that it's actually a fact just because enough people agree that it's a fact. Like they
Right.
might be agreeing on a false theory, but they don't understand it because it's just a theory that made sense to the most to them at that time of their level of awareness.
mm,
So like you have to look at it like that. So if enough people believe in this now fact as a reality, it becomes your reality. It's a
yeah,
consensus reality. People, your beliefs create your reality. So but how would a planet exist as a flat plane unless you're in a lower dimension? Like, I don't know. Like, maybe
mm,
I'm wrong. I don't actually understand all the secrets to the universe, right? But I really do think it's a consensus reality. And that's what's happening now. Like enough people start to believe in ETs and UFOs, they just start showing up in our reality. Like they're here now. Like there's no resistance. There's no vibrational frequency resistance anymore because everyone accepts it. They're now allowed into our reality and we can perceive them. They've always been there, but now we're open to it. So now we can perceive them.
Well, I think that's the reason when what you're saying for when I like look at people that the famous ones and the ones that you think are successful, the major
Right.
thing they all come back to was I was a big dreamer as a kid, and those
Hmm.
dreams are what manifested my future. And then I look back and I see the similarities with everybody like who's like us.
Right.
All of us were not only musicians and stuff like this, but daydreamers and stuff.
yeah,
And that was the thing I got in trouble for a lot in school.
Right.
And my kid too, my son's like this. And they were trying to beat that out of you for a reason.
A
You know what I'm
hundred
saying?
percent. Yeah. Yeah. They
Like
know
I
you're a
think that's the
co-creative.
trick to all of this is having an imagination and all that, and
Yeah.
they beat that out of you.
But going back to the flat earth thing, like maybe the earth is flat for those people that believe in it so wholeheartedly. Like maybe they have shifted into a reality where that is their reality. And it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it, but there is one thing I have observed when I try to have a conversation with these dieharders, I call them,
mhm,
um, they they immediately like they think they've reached some level of truth and they start belittling me and they're like come at me with this arrogance and this like condescending behavior. I'm
Yeah.
like that's not spiritual at all. That's actually the opposite of like
mm,
what you would have with an intelligent person who's going through a spiritual awakening,
Right.
which is another telltale sign that they're operating from a lower level of consciousness,
yeah,
Right.
which would make perfect sense. Like why they're so angry and so like they have to prove themselves because they're not tapping in to a true reality. They're not
Right.
tapping into the true spirituality. They're trapping in they're actually what that does is when you bombard the internet with so much propaganda and disinformation, it manipulates you away from your intuition, and now you're overthinking everything. So
Mm.
like you maybe innately you knew the planet was round, and you always knew that and you believed it, but then you start second guessing your own gut feeling because all this information is out there, and you're operating purely in your mind now, and you're not feeling into the information. You're just thinking about it logically. But we have three brains. We have our gut, our heart is a brain, and our brain is a brain. They're all three a brain. Like the Native Americans would say, you can go with your gut feeling immediately, always. Like it was just you go with your gut feeling, then you feel into that with your heart, and then your brain is basically just like for like motor skills, like to get from point A to point B,
Mm.
basically. But the real brain is your gut. And if you can manipulate a whole civilization, a whole planet of people away from their gut and got them completely up here,
Mm.
the part that they can control, they can't control your gut or your heart, but they can steer you away from it. And I think that's what's happening. So whenever you're in this information war, it's information overload, and people are being bombarded with all this stuff they don't know what to believe anymore, and they're constantly looking for external validation and looking externally for information instead of just tapping within and and realizing like they already have the answers. And if they could feel into the information, what does it actually feel like? Your body knows what's true and what's not. And like when somebody's lying to you, you can feel it. Well, if you're in tune with yourself, you can feel it. And when somebody is being truthful because that feels a certain way too. And if you can learn how to recognize how that feels, that's a great tool to have to help you navigate these times right now when we literally we can't believe what we see because like we understand the way they're able to deceive our visual cortex through deepfake technology, hologram technology, clones, you name it. Like we don't like you can watch a video that doesn't necessarily mean that it's real anymore.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
you have to be able to
But
feel into that.
everybody's also looking for that one truth that goes across everybody's reality. And then you got to believe that everything is infinite. So all things are possible. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So what you're saying is like essentially is like people do have, and they're in that mode that what you're saying, that lower mode, they have blinders on, thinking that they're just looking for that one way through life when there's everything around them that they're ignoring.
Well, I mean,
You
and that's the biggest
that when
red
you
flag
talk.
too. Right. And the biggest red flag is that, like, if you think that you found the ultimate truth, that you definitely have not. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
that's
right. Yeah.
and that's what a lot of these people think. They think that there's this one truth and they've discovered it, and then that's it. They can stop looking. The earth is flat. The Bible says so. That's what I believe in. The end.
Right.
And if they're not willing to expand their consciousness and go beyond that, that's a big red flag that they're still like, we're in this big game right now. Everybody's in this game to experience this reality for their soul's evolution. And some people are on their way out of the game and they're ascending out of it. And other people are on their way into the game. And everybody's at different levels of beliefs. And everybody's here. Like you might look at somebody and be like, oh, I see where you're at. Like I was there 2 years ago, and you're just
Mm.
now
Mhm.
going through that part of the game, right? And I feel like everybody's just at a different place. It doesn't mean that one person's right or one person's wrong. It's like a flower. It looks different all throughout its life, you know,
Right.
and everybody's just at a different point in their journey.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's a
almost like
growing,
you can see them and go, well, enjoy your journey. It's going to be a wild ride, right? You just look at them in
right,
that aspect and don't judge because it's like, well, I've
Well,
been
you know
there.
not to argue with them.
Yeah.
right.
It's like just not
Yeah.
no point.
So
Yeah.
I
It's,
wanted
it's,
to, if that's okay, dive into your Rebels of Disclosure conference. So how many of those do you host a
Yeah.
year? And also, I wanted to dive into what's going on with you currently because I just found out your channel's been cancelled on YouTube. So we want to know what's going on in your world. But yeah, let's dive into
You just
Rebels
found that
of,
out today.
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So, we only do one event a year because that's all I can mentally handle. It's a lot to put on a big event. I realized the first year I stressed myself out so much. I made myself sick actually, but it was all for no reason. I mean, I didn't need to stress out is what I'm trying to say because
Mm.
it all turned out beautifully. But it's a lot. It's a lot to host an event and sell tickets and get people to show up and book your presenters. And it's a whole. There's way more involved than I ever thought when I first pulled the trigger and like let's throw a conference. Where hundreds of people come. Like it's not like just having a couple of people over to your house. So um, we only do one a year, and that's all I really can handle and still maintain healthy lifestyle. And
Mm.
so that's what we do every May. And we only planned on doing one, and it was through popular demand. We did another one, and now I think we're just going to do annually. And it's the first one was purely, it was supposed to be a isolated secret space conference. We had all secret space program whistleblowers. The whole thing was secret space program themed, and it was a huge success. It was really interesting what happened. It was actually the most popular one we've done because secret space program is a really interesting topic. And when you have all these whistleblowers and ex-military in one under one roof, weird things happen. And and
Does it now?
we had oh yeah, we had like what I call Fed boys, like agents there that we had to kick out. They were there uh
Did you?
Wow.
for in the
Oh,
field. Oh yeah, definitely they were there like working for some agency, and
oh
there was a
wow.
whole weird
Unbelievable.
thing. They interviewed me and they're asking me questions like, do you ever play do you think feds ever infiltrate these conferences? Like he asked me straight up. And I already had
Oh,
speculated, I kind of already knew who they were at this point. And I said, I definitely think they do. He's like, do you guys
you
have
should
any
have said
like,
that would never happen. They would never do something like that.
no. What was funny about these guys is they were clearly like had bought brand new
Yeah.
like Star Wars and Star Trek t-shirts that still had the creases on them, like so they could fit in. And they're like, do you have any precautionary measures in place if they show up? And I was like, yeah, there's things here going on that a lot of people aren't aware of. That's how I answered that. And he goes, well, do you ever play games like Spot the Fed and all this stuff? And I said, yeah, we have people looking. It was this whole thing. They like told on themselves. Long story short, I had to kick them out. But also we had this this documentary crew from the Netherlands fly from the Netherlands to our very first event. Just me, Aaron and I, just two guys, two nobodies throwing on a conference, and all these people are showing up. This group from the Netherlands comes and films a professional documentary. It was amazing. They filmed the whole event and like they interviewed some of the speakers, and I'm in it. And yeah, actually, that was like the one good thing that came out of it. But we got a lot of attention,
It's
and
all part of that. Did you
Mm.
guys
yeah, and
post that at
then
one point?
yeah, it's on our Patreon. If you we have a Patreon account where you can find it, and it's like at the very top. We have an index of all the content of the on the Patreon, and it's on there. But and then also what I found interesting was, so this guy John Warner the fourth, his father was the Secretary of the Navy. He was a big name in the Navy. And if you guys know who Chris Mellon is, who's like one of the mainstream UFO guys that's all over the news, so he's Chris Mellon's cousin. And John Warner,
Was
we interviewed him.
wasn't he related to
What?
a Rockefeller or one of them?
Yeah,
Was that
yeah, they're
so?
definitely they're in the families. But so John Warner the fourth, we've interviewed him twice, and off air, he told us he still has ties with the Navy, Naval, ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence and stuff, and he talks to those guys, and he said that they asked him, the Navy asked him if he was going to go to the Secret Space Conference in Grafton, Illinois, like even so that he said the Navy knew all about the conference we put on. Like it was this crazy thing. We got way more attention than we ever wanted, and it was wild. But so that was the first one. And the second year was it was a lot more enlightening information. It wasn't as dark and heavy as the Secret Space Program, and it was beautiful. It was equally as awesome, but it was a little bit different. It focused more on like spirituality and awakening and human potential and Hollow Earth and a lot of all this other stuff that we didn't talk about in the first conference. And then this year is going to be a mix of the first two. Like it's just going to be, a lot of the space program stuff, but a lot of new stuff. And Aaron and I are going to be speaking for the first year. Like we didn't speak the first 2 years of our own conference because it was never about us, but everybody's like, you guys should speak. So we gave ourselves a time slot this year. And Rebels of Disclosure is what we decided to call it. And there's a website, rebelsofdisclosure.com. And I know you're in Australia, so you can't make it, but there are virtual passes available, so you
I
can
was
tune
gonna
in
ask
live. And
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
we were gonna definitely, if I can't come out there, was gonna get that live pass, the live show.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
would encourage people to do that. It's really cool. And if the presenter, when they're done, if they have time to take questions, we'll have somebody in the. So we have a Telegram group also, and we'll have somebody in anybody who's watching the live stream. They can be in the Telegram group and they could submit questions for the speakers. So their questions could even be answered from home while they're, while. So that's a cool feature.
yeah.
And yeah, so
I've seen most of those interviews of those people that you have on there. They're very good. Like
mhm,
Tony Rodriguez, I guess you would say his name, like that guy
yeah, mhm.
Olson. I forget his first name.
Brad
Those are
Olson,
all
yeah.
interviews, man. I love them. So I would love to see it.
Yeah, the information's great, but what I don't think people realize is when you get together at these events, like the camaraderie and the activations and just being around all your
Yeah.
friends, where you don't have to do like the small talk, surface level conversations that freaking put us to
Yeah.
sleep, you know? You just you show up and you meet somebody and within 5 minutes you're telling each other like you're having the most in-depth deep conversation that
Yeah.
you would only have with like your longtime friend, but you just met this person, but on some level you know that you know each other on a soul level,
Yeah.
and it's just beautiful, and like you're activating each other, and it's just we have these like bonfires every night and the sky watches, and it's just a lot of fun. And it's like that area is like a paranormal hotspot. So there's a lot of Sasquatch activity. There's like famous UFO sightings been there. There's like this giant like Thunderbird thing that's a whole legend in the area that I don't know. There's a lot in that area. It's a cool spot to host an event.
And
So
it's Grafton, you said Illinois? Is that what it was?
Grafton, Illinois. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Mhm.
done. I'm moving. I don't want to be in Australia anymore. I'm coming over there, you guys.
Yeah. As we're all
But
trying to get out of America, she's trying to get in here.
Yeah,
well,
just I feel like you guys have all the cool stories, all the knowledge, all the epic experiences down there. Oh,
I there's a lot going
Propaganda.
on in Australia too. There's a lot happening there, and I think Australia is a lot more spiritually significant than it
mm.
gets than is understood. Like Uluru, like that's arguably the heart chakra of the planet. And if you look at it from above, it literally looks like that's the rock is in the shape of a human heart, which is really
Wow.
interesting. But um, there's so
What's this
much
called?
history. Uluru. Um,
LaRue?
am I saying that right?
Yeah, yeah, Uluru. Yep, yep.
Uluru. Yeah.
It's a sacred mountain. Not many people go there, but when you do, it's just very spiritual. It's got a lot of the energy there is incredible. I've actually spoken to a few
Wow.
people who've been there and had some amazing
Right.
experiences. So
Probably a base under the damn thing for all.
Well, maybe not. Like I know Pine Gap is like Australia's Area 51, and there's a number of, military bases in Australia as well. And one of them, like the early time travel programs, one of their main stations was in Australia. So there's plenty going on over there. But uh, we have surprisingly a large number of our fan bases in Australia, and we have more fans in Australia than like any other country, and it's not even out of the realm of possibility for us to go down and have a journey to down under conference, journey
oh,
of the
that
truth
would be
down under conference.
so good. Yeah.
Getting to your second part of the question. Yeah, so YouTube finally removed our channel after 5 years. It's unbelievable we made it as long as we did.
That was depressing when I heard that today, but
It was depressing when I read the email. YouTube
Mm.
I
sends
bet
their
it was.
emails out at like 4 in the morning. So you wake up and like first thing you see is your channel's been removed. But
And what's their reason for that? Is
harmful conspiracy theories. That's what they say. We were
real.
promoting harmful conspiracy theories, but it's been a systematic dismantling of our channel over a couple of years anyway. Like before, they've removed 18 episodes, and they gave us a different reason why they removed each one, either medical misinformation, cyberbullying, or harmful conspiracy theories. One of the
Okay.
three. And then they demonetized our channel. And then they went a step further and took away all of our features. We couldn't pin comments anymore. We couldn't do like all the basic features that everyone gets on YouTube. They took them away. So basically, all we could do was upload a video, and that was it. And then we couldn't even do that. And so they demonetized us, which means they take, there's no ads in your videos anymore, which is the plus side of it. But there were they were still playing ads in our videos, even though they demonetized us. So it was like,
Mm.
in like our documentary, which is like something that really like we purposely didn't even monetize that one when were monetized because we didn't want to have ads in it. That was one that they put ads throughout, and it was like
Oh,
intentional. Anyway, finally
Wow.
they just said F you, and they just took us down, and it really sucked, but they kind of set us up for the biggest volleyball spike of all time, because it what it did was we had like this overwhelming flood of support. Like we said earlier, they always shoot themselves in the foot. We had
yeah.
a whole bunch we had a whole bunch of people move over to our Rumble and subscribe over there, and a whole bunch of people um, signed up for our Patreon, which was amazing because that's kind of how we make a living now. And it actually gave us a little more attention in a weird way, even though we lost like 40,000 subscribers because of it. But uh,
Well,
because we
listen, man.
were
Good. I'm sorry.
what?
I was going to say, I was telling Natalie earlier today the fan base you guys have, because I'd be in those live chats you guys have, and your fan base is for real, man. They stick up for you guys like no other. Like wherever you go, they're going to follow you, is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly, yeah. And it's funny you say that because one of the things that I learned, unfortunately, the hard way is, we started when you get into this awakening, you start following all these channels and all these people, and you go to these conferences and stuff, and especially being on the back end of it, interviewing these people, meeting them off camera, off stage at the events and stuff, and seeing how they are behind the scenes. Unfortunately, a lot of these sometimes very highly looked up to spiritual people and leaders and stuff aren't who you think they are. And
You hear that a lot.
it's very heartbreaking to like, oh man, like this guy's a total fraud, he
Right.
knows what to
Yeah.
say. He knows what to say on stage and wow and enamor the audience with the information, but he's not practicing what he preaches, he or she. And we've come across this with a number of people, and it's very heartbreaking. And it was like this very hard lesson we had to learn. I had to learn personally not to attach yourself to anybody or their information. And I think ultimately it's a beautiful lesson, but I'm using that as like the base for the example that I want to set with Journey to Truth.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the reason we have that type of fan base is because I can guarantee you that if you meet me in person, you're gonna meet the same exact person that you met on camera.
Yeah.
It's not like we're putting on a show. We're just being
Right.
ourselves, and that's just and I don't want to be the one to let people down like I was let down by all the other people by being somebody that I'm not, you
Mm.
know. So
I love
that's why
No
that.
it
God.
just I think
I
that's why
remember one. I remember one episode where you guys were interviewing Captain Randy Kramer last time, man.
oh yeah, that was
You put a
interesting.
warrant you put a warning out. It was like, yo, this guy's about to talk some trash. Everybody, we don't agree with everything he's about to say. And he started talking, and of course, everybody starts getting a little mad. And then he comes out and he says, I'm the official spokesman for the US Marine Corps. And the
Hmm.
switchboard like lit up. I was like, nah, I can't trust shit you got to say, man. It's like
Right.
I was to trust you, and you're telling me you work for the people who've been lying to us this whole time.
Right.
That's what.
And he was trying to tell us that the mainstream media doesn't lie to us and all this stuff.
Yeah,
And yeah, but it was interesting. Like that's one of the people like he's not the nicest person, even though he has good information. But we're not here to judge. It's just our experience with him.
I remember
Um,
that. That was funnier than hell.
yeah.
Yeah, well, look, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming here and sharing, your side of the story. And it was really awesome to connect with you and learn from you. Maybe just share again where the viewers can find you, because again, you're not on YouTube anymore. You're now on Rumble. So let us know where we can find you there. Do you have a website? Yeah.
Yeah, so Rumble is our main channel. We did create a new YouTube account under a backup email, and we started uploading our videos on there, and we got 2 strikes already, like within a couple days. So then I'm sure they'll just take that down. We tried, but our main channel is Rumble. You can find a backup channel on YouTube, but we're not going to be there very long, I wouldn't imagine. We're on Apple Podcast. We were on Spotify. Spotify kicked us off as well.
Oh,
Really?
gosh.
Um,
You're onto
yeah,
something good when you're getting canceled everywhere.
right. So,
We
yeah, then PayPal kicked us off. Like PayPal kicked us off. Venmo kicked us off. It
Wow.
was
I
it
know
was a
we
whole,
interviewed Ivan Teller, who you had on your show,
yeah,
and he was our first interview when we started this, and they do the same thing to that guy. I watch him
yeah.
every day, and they
Oh yeah,
kick
he's
him off,
close to the truth.
demonetize.
Like you would think like he's like talking crazy, but like I think
No,
he's
he's
closer.
awesome.
Nah.
Yeah, I think he's closer to the truth than a lot of people realize. But
Oh,
um,
I love that dude.
yeah, they just they censor you. But you can find us on Apple Podcast, Rumble, primarily on social media. We're on Telegram, Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter. Um, our website, we just let the old website expire, and we're actually today I've been working on it all day, building a new website. And the new website's going to be awesome. It's going to be all encompassing. It's going to have everything that we have to offer all in one place, finally, like it always should have been. And it's going to be really cool. I'm excited about that. So the new website is on the way. It'll be called Journey to Truth dot online, I think, because the other one was taken. So
Hmm.
uh, we're we're working on that. And
And Patreon.
Patreon, yeah, the Patreon is the big thing. So we do our bi-monthly webinars over there, and which is fun because we've interviewed people for 5 years and had our own experiences. Now we get to take all that research and do deep dives on our favorite
Yeah,
topics. And yeah,
I
they're like
saw
two
some
and
of the
three.
videos you guys put together.
Yeah, yeah, we do. They're like 2 to 3 hours long. But if you want to know, like we did one on clones and the history of cloning, and it got really great reviews. But it's like everything you ever want to know about clones and what we could find in the internet, plus in all the books we read and all the interviews we've done and interviews out there, we compile it all, we present it all, and let you decide what at the end if you think it's bullshit or not, which it's not. Like there's so much on cloning, it's like completely obviously real. But we did the very first one we did was the history. We called it UFOs for Dummies, but it's more or less the history of UFOs.
Yes. Yeah.
And we started back from, we did a whole timeline of UFO history starting back from the late 1800s all the way to currently. And because right now they're trying to erase history, they're trying to like they
Yeah.
want us to forget about all that, and they're trying to give us this new UAP, NHI bullshit. So we created a timeline so you can go back.
Awesome.
We've done one on the voice of God technology, which a lot of people don't know about. We did one on
You have
all
one
the
on Inner
deep
Earth too,
underground
didn't you?
military. What?
Inner
What did you
Earth?
say?
Did you do one on Inner Earth?
Yeah. So we did one on the deep underground military bases, and then part two of that was the Hollow Earth,
Yeah.
um, which was very well received, and it was one of my favorites. We've done the latest one was Tartaria, which is a crazy webinar. That was our longest one. It was over 3 hours long. Um,
Really?
and then the next one we're doing is if this is going on YouTube, you might actually want to bleep that out because that is one of the major trigger words, especially
Can't
with the
say that
election,
there.
especially with the election coming up. And that that might be one of the reasons our channel got taken down, which I won't talk about that because I don't want to get your channel taken down. But
Yeah.
No
that's
kidding.
actually coming up this Sunday.
Thank you for telling me, because I would
I'm
have said it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna join your Patreon because you got me hooked. I told Jimmy today, I was like, I don't think I've ever been so excited to do a podcast. I think I want to go away from near-death experience and more into secret space program and all this stuff. So yeah, you really awakened something in me. I'm really excited about this. So thank you for coming on.
Yep.
And
And
those of you watching, definitely go on to Journey to Truth on Patreon and help them out. And yeah.
the
Yeah, Tyler,
Patreon is only $5 a month. It's only one tier. There's not like multiple tiers. We kind of do away with the class system thing, you know. We just like $5, you get everything, you know.
yeah, man.
Same with the
Awesome.
conference. Same with the conference. We don't have VIP tickets. Like if you buy a ticket, you have access to everything everybody has access to. So thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun. You guys are great.
I appreciate that, bro. Thank you.
All right. Well, you
All
take
right, everybody.
care, guys.
I'll keep talking if you don't tell me.
That's why I'm like, let's go. We're just going to keep talking all day. All right.
I'll talk to you.
Guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.